So, welcome to the Elite Mark Order podcast. I'm Cosmic Scott. That's JV. And tonight we're going to talk about the AEW Dynamite from January 18, 2023. So, Jay, what did you think about the show kind of overall starting with a match, starting with the All Atlantic title match, Orange versus Lethal?
I gotta say, I love Orange Cassidy's new theme. At first, I did not like it at all.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Best Friends theme better, or I can't even remember exactly what he was using before, but I love his new theme. I just love that near near near. I just think it's awesome. I just think it's an epic entrance. But
Well,
yeah, the
it's
cast. Oh,
it's
go ahead.
also based entirely off of the gimmick character that he's copying is from a movie, and that song is from the movie. So there's a great interplay for those of us who know basically what the gimmick is doing. I don't remember the name of the movie offhand, but I assure you, if you look up the song, it's associated with it highly. Were you aware of that?
I remember saying it was. I thought it was a takeoff. It's similar to "Rock Me Like a Hurricane," which was all the sports shows like on NBC and ABC would always play the hell out of that song and use it as bumper music, and some of
Sure.
the teams would use it when they came out to the ice or came out onto the field. But it's from the same group, I think,
No.
that did Rock Me Like a Hurricane. It's not.
No, that's the Scorpions. This is a totally different group.
Okay.
Sorry, I happen to be a Scorpions fan in the '80s when they were big. So
Yeah, I think we've had this discussion about the origins of the song in the Elite Mark Order chat room, but
probably
I just can't remember. It's been a hell of a day.
that's true, and that's not an issue. So the match itself was fun, lethal, and of course his entire entourage. The whole fun part of this match for me was that Jeff Jarrett didn't get to interfere, or Sanjay Dutt got fired. So that was pretty cool. And then during it, you obviously had Danhausen interacting, doing the comedy bits. This is the comedy part of the show. And Danhausen, the best friends, and hopefully people understand Jeff Jarrett is a joke, therefore it works with the entire comedy bit. He didn't get to do, any of his stuff. He was kept in check. It was a great interaction. Of course, Orange Cassidy got the win, got to keep his title because he's great. Danhausen got to steal the guitar, do the. It was great fun. I enjoyed it. Let's face it, it's not everybody's cup of tea. But to be quite honest, I like a lot of different types of wrestling. Sometimes the hardcore, and sometimes the comedy. And the comedy starting a show is a way to get. And Danhausen is charismatic as shit. Put him
Yeah.
on in non wrestling stuff, and he is a star in a couple of years.
Yeah, he is. Orange is great. I loved a couple spots in the match. I think my favorite spot was Danhausen playing Jeff Jarrett's guitar.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was hilarious. It was just I want to see. I'm sure there's gifs out there. I haven't been on Twitter today. I'm sure there's gifs out there of Danhausen playing playing the guitar. That was hilarious, and he played it just as well as Jeff Jarrett ever has because I don't think Jarrett could play the guitar.
I mean, you saw that GIF in the chat room earlier today. If not, you should look up. But I did make a GIF of a particular move that I thought was pretty impressive. But that's later in the show. I'll talk about
Yeah, I did see that, and I saw the Elite Mark Order
stamp.
stamp on there, so that was cool too.
Uh,
So one of my favorite spots in the match was it was I guess I can't call it a tribute to Mitsuharu Misawa because I don't know if other guys did it before him, but um, Misawa, one of the things Misawa would do, and if you're not familiar with Mitsuharu Misawa, he was the ace of all Japan in the '90s, and then he started the promotion Noah, which is still around today,
mm-hmm.
in the early 2000s, and unfortunately he passed away in the ring in 2009. But Misawa is considered the GOAT by a lot of people, and it's hard to argue against that
Okay.
in a lot of people's opinion. He's just in ring. He's one of the greatest workers ever. He carried promotions as the top guy for 15 years. and had some of the greatest matches ever. Changed the sport, changed wrestling. But anyhow, during the match, one of the things Misawa used to do, like nobody would pin Misawa. Like he would not take a pinfall. And when it finally did happen, once or twice a year, it was
Of
huge,
course.
and it elevated whoever pinned him huge. So one of the things Misawa would do when he would get hit by a guy's finisher or he would get hit with a brutal spot is instead of laying in the ring, he would summon all his energy to roll out to the floor.
Sure.
And Jay Lethal crushed Orange Cassidy with a perfect lethal injection, his finisher off the ropes. I'm like, holy shit, how's Orange going to get out of this? And Orange used all his energy to just roll over to the rings and edge of the ring and roll out onto the floor, so Jay couldn't pin him. And I'm like, oh, that was so perfect. That
But
was such a great.
he's the king of the sloth style, you got to remember.
Yeah, yeah,
And he rolled around the ring earlier in the match to frustrate Jay, so it played or to frustrate Lethal. And so it played totally into the entire story of the match. When
Yeah.
you ignored all of the rest of the shenanigans, this was actually a pretty good wrestling match inside the ring.
yeah. Oh, it was an excellent match. Lethal and Orange are both excellent wrestlers. Um, just the spot I'm thinking of, I'm rambling on about All Japan.
You are.
Is Akira Taue grabbed. I know some of the Elite Mark Order fans do like Puro, so they'll
Uh,
appreciate this. But one of the first times I ever saw a spot off the apron to the floor was Akira Taue grabbed Misawa and chokeslammed him off the apron to the floor, and I think that was the first time I had ever seen that done. Um, Today it would be a decent bump, but it like back then it was groundbreaking because you just didn't do moves from the apron to the floor.
yeah.
So Misawa was like done after that. Like Taui had been trying and trying and trying to pull it off, and finally got it. And it was a tag match, and Misawa they thought he was done. They threw him back in the ring, and he just rolled out to avoid getting pinned, and that's what Orange reminded me of. So I've spent what 5 minutes talking about that now.
You definitely like the Japanese stuff, and you know your history. So,
Yeah.
who's to say that's not going to draw the audience?
Yeah.
But
The other thing I liked was, and then I'll that my last comment on this match will be when Satnam Singh came in and grabbed both of the guys. I can't remember if it was just the best friends.
yeah, it was Trent.
That guy-
It was Trent and
That guy
Chuck.
is such a monster. I mean, my fiance was in the room. She's like, "Oh my god, is that guy real?" I'm like, "Yeah."
No, he's a
He's
cartoon. He's fucking a giant. There is no question. He's a big, big sight to see, and
And
that's
Yeah, and she's like, he doesn't have the giant disease either. Like sometimes a giant, like Andre was, he was. I don't want to say deformed, but you could tell that he had some growth issues. But Satnam doesn't really look like that. He just looks like a big giant, and he's man. I just want to see this guy unleashed.
he's not as mobile as you think. Of course, he does have some. He had one match, and they're like, okay, let's keep you practicing for a reason. Because
Yeah.
he's not quite good enough yet, but he's a great heater, as you call it, and he's there, and he brings just a sight. He's a Vince McMahon type, where anywhere he goes, he draws eyes.
Yeah, he passes the airport test. for
Exactly,
sure.
he passed the airport test. So you keep him around, you keep him working on his skill set, and one day he'll be unleashed, and on that day he'll be a monster. So.
Yeah.
Give him time to grow. He's going to be there. He's paired up now with Jeff Jarrett, who is a legit long-term veteran who knows what he's doing in the ring. And he can only learn from that. And he's been around. He's a high-level talker. And he's got Lethal with him, who's also been around and is a good talker and has a lot of different personalities that he's shown over the years and can help Satnam really develop some sort of personality beyond I wear nice suits and I'm really tall.
Yeah.
But
So what's your opinion on Sanjay? Do you give him a thumbs up, thumb down overall for his performance in AEW? And what do you think of him on the booking committee?
as far as booking goes, he's been okay. I mean, some of the matches have all made sense. His on-screen character he's designed to be annoying, so he is, but he plays his role. He was influential in stopping Jeff and Satnam because his job was threatened. So,
Right.
he's a great manager on the outside because he's a wrestler, because he can get physical one day. But why at this point? So, um, I I think I don't know his performance behind the scenes, but if he's influencing stuff, and there's a level of bureaucracy and support for Tony in making and talking about and deciding and making sure they're not duplicating finishes every night, I'm
Yeah.
all for it. Great. He's
Yeah.
doing a great job.
All right.
So the next segment that moved right on into was one I was highly anticipating. As we talked about earlier, I made a GIF of it because I absolutely love Top Flight. And it was the tag team match of Top Flight versus the Young Bucks. Now, this is really their only time for a rematch since basically Top Flight came in because Darius has been hurt for so long. When the opportunity to have the Young Bucks available, he was on the shelf, and Dante was left, quote unquote, holding the bag. He was doing phenomenal. So this is the first time they've actually had the chance to get together in the ring and have a match, and damn, I liked it. Once again, Young Bucks, they move around the ring in a way I think is extraordinarily fluid. Nick Jackson, especially, in and out of the ring, hits a move, moves over, hits a move. He was able to go corner to corner, did it's just a phenomenal series of moves, all one after another, in concert with his brother. They are one of the best tag teams of all times. I don't care what you say otherwise. Now, of course, we happen to be on a podcast called the Elite Mark Order. I think we're biased, but I didn't know who the Young Bucks were before All Elite Wrestling. I've been a fan of wrestling a number of years, and we'll just say that. And I am just impressed every single time they get into a match with somebody that they like the Lucha Brothers, like the Top Flight, and goddamn, those Martin brothers can fly. I love their style because Dante, when he gets over the ropes, he hangs there for a second or two, and his entire flip over Matt Jackson for the tag spot was phenomenal. Just doing that in the middle of a match, holy crap! Tell me he is not conditioned to hell. What?
Yeah, he is the man that gravity forgot. Like
That? Yeah.
he's got some anti-gravity shit going on. And he doesn't overdo it. Like he could do more, I think, and he doesn't. Like he does enough where he looks super impressive. But I think he can do more. And I think once he starts having huge matches down the road, once he's main eventing, maybe that'll be 5 years from now. I think he'll bust out some stuff that he can do that, that we're just not ready for yet.
It's hard to say because god damn do these guys defy all freaking laws of physics, and working together they are phenomenal. The springboard flatliner, I think, was mentioned in the chat, in the Discord chat, and that move that Darius does look fluid, and Dante does so many different springboards off of the top, off the middle. Just a plain front flip over a person in the middle of a match. The dude is just great, and in the next couple of years, they stay healthy, they continue to grow. I don't know where they're going, but it's up. And Tony, again, this is a homegrown team. They didn't exist before Tony hired them and saw their potential. He knew that these guys were going to be phenomenal. And the Young Bucks obviously helped them get the job, get their contract, because they also are one of the best and know that these guys are going to be huge in a few years. And the Young Bucks don't have to be. There are teams like this and the Lucha Brothers to carry the rest of the tag division while they're doing trios and other stuff. What did you think of the match?
I thought it was an excellent tag match. It didn't disappoint. Nothing really. I mean, I was impressed with a lot of the athletics, but from like a who's going to win standpoint, I did pick the Dante and Darius to win. I did Top Flight to win. I think that I don't know if they're using this to set up a Top Flight and AR Fox title shot against Kenny and the Bucks. And I think Top Flight, this also elevates Top Flight is in the tag ratings that don't really exist anymore. Just ask Andrew about that.
Poor guy, he hates that.
But so I think Top Flight is kind of in a position to potentially get a tag title shot with their faces. So I think it makes more sense that they'll go after six man. And the Bucks might want a win back after last night.
I think they would totally keep the title, and I absolutely agree that maybe they build long enough and go for a big either pay-per-view or pay-per-view style TV episode, and they just have themselves a really incredible trios match, and AR Fox absolutely adds to their team. He's done it before, and he's a similar, obviously not the same, he's a similar high flyer. They did win the trios triple man 300K match back on Rampage a couple of weeks ago.
They did. So they're double primed for a title shot.
They're absolutely ready for that title shot for the trios match. And this is a great way to set it up because they did beat the Bucks in a match that they're supposed to be great at. But again, as Excalibur said, that they haven't had a simple tag match in well over 6 months. And so
that was definitely notable. Since the suspension, they've only fought in 6-man matches, so it was their first tag match in a really long time. They also said on BTE that over the past week there had been some stuff going on and made it possibly the worst week of their life, and they said they can't disclose what that was. So my thought is, one of their family members was having an issue or getting a diagnosis that could have been really bad, but turned out to be okay. So, it's good news on that front that whatever their fears weren't recognized. But speaking of that, I mean, we can't go without mentioning that this tonight was a tribute show to Jay Briscoe,
right,
and that horrific car accident that took 2 lives and severely injured his daughters. Just a tragic event.
Affected a lot of people. I mean, across the industry, there were people who were like, without these two guys, we wouldn't be where we are. They taught us part of our character work. Tyler Black / Seth Rollins said, without those guys, I would never have become Seth Rollins. So, they got so much of an outpouring of love and support for Mark, whose birthday was the next day.
Yeah.
So
it's he'll never have a good birthday again.
Probably
just
not.
a horrific scenario. Great outpouring of support from the whole wrestling community.
And the Bucks did have the armbands, and they made at least one in-ring tribute with their Doomsday device, which is something the Briscoes were doing for a long time.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys on the show wore the J armband.
Absolutely. And then they, as they talked about, they did the actual Briscoe ROH sort of honor, tribute match show, which I think is, kind of appropriate that you do it on ROH anyways, because that's where they were for 20 plus years. That's who employed them at the end. That's they went into their Hall of Fame already. So, back when they thought they weren't ever going to have another show again. So they were honored as much as Ring of Honor could have, and I think that was the appropriate spot to really have that sort of tribute show, to be quite honest. Let AEW be AEW, let ROH be ROH.
Right.
And I was fine with that.
The Briscoes probably would have been AEW, but past transgressions led to Warner Brothers not wanting them on TV. I don't want to get into any details about that, but if you wanted to say something about it, feel free.
It is what it is. It's literally past. it's not a big deal anymore for me, because you know, if he truly believed in what he said that he changed, then good on him. He's just met his maker, and he's good to go. Good to go. And
Yeah.
that's fine by me. If he didn't, then he's paying his price. So I got nothing left. You know.
Yeah, I still can't believe it. I mean, he had posted a picture on Twitter with his brother a few hours before the accident happened. He had posted a picture in the morning of a rainbow over his pool, which I
Yeah.
thought was interesting. It's very, very shocking. Just when I heard, I was like, I think it was Krillin or Kingpin posted in the chat room that, a couple minutes after Tony Khan tweeted
Yeah.
that he had passed. I was like, wait, what? Like, and I was thinking like Jack or Jerry Briscoe passed, like one of those guys.
Right.
That,
Well.
and I'm like, it could not Jay. I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah,
It,
it's definitely up there. I think of the most shocked moments there have been with wrestling news. Um, Benoit will always be number one, but
that's a whole different story, though.
yeah, but Briscoe, I think this one is a top five along with Brody. A lot
Bro.
of people would say Eddie Guerrero, just these
Yeah.
unexpected top guys.
Yeah.
Um,
Dying young.
Yeah.
And realistically, this one, he did nothing wrong except not wear a seatbelt, but that's, no guarantee of coming out alive anyways. He was hit head on. He was in the correct lane. So, I'm guessing it was a young, inexperienced driver, and, whatever. But I just hope his daughters are okay. I know there was some surgery involved, and, the family's just having a terrible time. So hopefully that's, just not any additional tragedy. Just
Right.
having the surgery and recovering is enough for me.
Yeah. Hopefully that's what happens. So back to the Bucks Dante match. Um,
They
yeah,
got. Mhm.
it reminded me of. Do you remember the 6-man match? It was August 11th in 2021. It was Kenny and the Bucks against Dante and the Sidal brothers, Matt and Mike Sidal. And that match was one of the craziest crowd responses for it. Like Kenny was putting Dante Martin over,
Mhm.
and Dante was pulling out all these crazy moves on Kenny and getting near falls, and it looked like Dante might get the win over. He might pin Kenny, and I think that match was pivotal in Dante's career because the
Oh yeah.
crowd just blew up for him, and they've supported him ever since.
Well,
So it was him going back up against the Bucks again.
again with the support of his brother, they were both getting over when Darius gets hurt, when he got shelved, and for the first time, he was injured in the ring. The second time, he got into a damn car accident.
Right.
So, he was on the shelf for way too long, but Dante grew in the ring. He impressed week after week. He did all these crazy rope moves, and you're right. He's got a set repertoire now, but at the same time, he's going to break some stuff out in the future when they let him just go. But that's something to anticipate as it comes up. They did get what's considered basically a big upset. They got the win over
Yep.
the Young Bucks with I believe it was a roll up.
Yep. Yeah, the Bucks went for the BTE trigger. Dante ducked, and they smashed their shins together, and Dante got a surprise roll up win.
And obviously that's a great way to show that it was a tough match all the way around. But Dante was no, it wasn't Dante. It was Darius. It was because Dante was on the floor.
Was it Darius that got the pin?
It was.
Oh,
It was Darius.
Yeah.
Dante was
Yeah.
on the floor after taking the double super kick to the face after he came off the top middle rope. The top of the top rope in the center, not a corner. But
Yep.
but yeah,
Darius,
Darius got the pin because again, this is elevating him because Dante had all that time to get elevated. So Darius gets the pin. And they hopefully move on to getting a trios title and having another great set of matches, hopefully set against the Young Bucks and the Kenny, the Elite.
Yep. And so I know you're a huge Brandon Cutler fan. So were there any remarkable Brandon Cutler spots in that match, or for you, or do you think he didn't really get to play a part in this one?
I don't really remember Cutler getting involved, but I'll be honest, watching this entire episode, I was kind of distracted, so I didn't really get the full effect. I wasn't able to rewatch it earlier today. So just a lot of combination of factors that I just don't have any big things. I still love Cutler. I just didn't notice that he did too much personally to get involved in the match, either outside the ring or what have you. I wasn't paying full attention. There was a lot going on. What can I
I
say?
don't recall anything from Cutler either, so I think we have to pin the blame on of the loss on Brandon Cutler, and maybe we'll
Yeah.
find out more on Being the Elite this coming Monday.
Good plug. Hopefully that helps. They
Yeah.
only get, a couple 100 million views, right?
All right.
So next up was the interview between Renee Paquette and Hangman Adam Page, and Page kind of, it was a good back and forth. Renee came across. She didn't have the microphone; they used a boom mic, and so she came across a lot more casual in her
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And she talked about, I was talking to John about this, so it was sort of like they were having a casual sort of back and forth conversation on camera. And so Hangman got to have his interactions. Again, ultimately it leads up to another match with Moxley coming up. And he tried to say something at the end and then reconsidered. It's all Hangman doing the anxious millennial cowboy thing, which is fine. That's his thing. He gets to be basically an actor. It's why we're in it, for the drama. And we love the cowboy shiznit, I guess.
Yeah, I still want to see. I was kind of disappointed on one hand because I want to see Mox and Hangman go at it in a vicious, bloodthirsty, crazy lights out match. I want to see those two guys beat the hell out of each other. I want to see a dead eye, through a table. I want to see a paradigm shift, off the ramp to the floor. I want to see these guys kill each other. Not literally, but but that interview, it seemed like Hangman was being kind of nice.
He
He was kind of like, yeah, I had to do what I do. It's revenge, and we're all good now. So it's like,
right.
are they just going to move on, or are they going to continue this feud?
Well, here's the thing. Right now, Mox is hurting out. He's going to want revenge. They're even now, so he's going to come back and want to get the one up. But
Yeah,
Hangman is going to play the guy who's like, I don't care anymore. I'm over it. I'm sorry I hurt you, but kind of we're even, right? And I'm
yeah.
worried about my own shit over here. I don't need to worry about you over there.
And Hangman did mention that, when Renee asked him what he's up to, he's like, I'm trying to mend some relationships, which is obviously referring to the Elite. So, the question becomes, is Hangman going to try to befriend the Elite again? Is he going to start talking to Matt? Is that going to show up on Monday on BTE? So I think this is the first BTE since the suspension, other than the first one after the suspension, that I'm really looking forward to, because they hinted towards continuing that storyline. So, I it'll be real interesting to see if Hangman's going to try and get back in the Elite, and they'll try to bury the hatchet. I don't know how that's going to work with Kenny, and the Bucks being the six-man champs. I don't know where Kenny was this week. He was just taking the week off. He's had a pretty busy schedule, fighting in Japan and everything,
Yeah,
and
give him
probably
some time off. He just won a
yeah,
championship. He's gonna have to, defend it. And they've got plenty of the Japanese talent coming in now. There's some great examples of their interaction with New Japan, introducing plenty of the New Japan stars to people like me who haven't seen them over the years, like you.
yeah.
And it reminds me a lot, in the best of ways, of WCW bringing in the lucha talent. But instead of raiding, they're actually working with New Japan, and they're having a better, more powerful partnership across international lines on a much larger scale, which is good for wrestling in general, because together they could compete against something like the WWE. They're bringing the best of the talents from New Japan, which is a huge, established, known base. So if they're bringing the best of 20 years, they know there's a good match, and the audience will respond, and they have every time.
Yep.
Because a lot of the audience is hardcore, and they know the Japan stuff. They know all of the, much like you, and much like a lot of the elite marks. You guys have gone to the shows. You're watching the Japanese stuff. You're watching some of the Mexican stuff. You know, there's a huge fan base of AEW that's very into the wrestling scene, and that's not a bad thing to me. But that's the hardcore base, if you want to call it, and they're the ones who understand when the Japanese star comes in. They need their music. They need an entrance. They need, they are established stars, and treat them as such. I know you agree.
I agree. One last thing on the Mox interview before we move on. Not the Hangman interview, I'm sorry. So Hangman said, after talking about him and the Elite, he shifted gears at the very end of the interview and said, I want you to ask somebody something. And Renee was like, okay. And then Paige goes, never mind.
Right. So, it was obviously sending a message to her husband.
But what was the question going to be? Like, do you want to team up? Do you want to have a rematch to get revenge? What was the question? That's the big mystery.
That's called open loop psychology. And it's forcing you to go, well, now I want to know the answer.
Is that what you wrote your psychology thesis on?
No, absolutely not. I wrote that on lucid dreaming.
Okay. That's
a totally different basis of my reality, though. The fact is, wrestling is an outlet, not an educational thing. I just happen to be an academic. What can I say?
Okay. Well, this will definitely lead to some more interesting discussions. I did not know that about you in the Elite Mark Order chat room. So join us on our Discord.
I'll put that again in the description. You can also copy it, by the way. When you upload it, you can copy, because I went in and made sure that the links were linkable, and the Discord, you can just click on it and it brings you right to an invite into the Discord channel. And if you don't have Discord, it'll open up a website and allow you to download Discord automatically and sign up with an account.
We did add a few new Elite Marks this week, so the Elite Mark Order is growing. We are preparing to take over the world.
One step at a time, one listener at a time, one subscription at a time. Yes. And all you got to do is click that subscribe button and hit that bell.
One banned AEW Games Discord member at a time.
Not all of us are banned. Robert left voluntarily. I'm trying to get banned. Eventually it'll happen. I push every rule I can.
I won't until at least after Fight Forever. So
I won't intentionally. Well, I will. I don't care. I have another account.
I'm hoping to play competitively in Fight Forever.
Yeah, that's true.
Like I was with Elite GM.
You were the number one player.
I was the number one Elite GM player, and one of these days I'm going to put together a video on the history of Elite GM. And I have a lot of stuff to draw from. I even have an epic game recorded against the number 2 player, which would be kind of an example of, I guess you could call it the Elite GM end game.
There you go.
So
there you go. Well, hey, I think that's a great idea for video, for the website, and for the YouTube channel. You should probably join the website, if you haven't already, at the EliteMarkOrder.com website. And YouTube, we don't have our nickname yet, but we will.
Well, our YouTube name is Elite Mark Order, so subscribe to the Elite Mark Order channel.
You can just search for Elite Mark Order in YouTube, and guess what? It will find us.
And if you search it on Google, there's only 6 matches that all lead to us.
Ooh, every road leads to us.
That's right.
All right. After the Hangman...
That so no one can steal it from us.
Trademark everything.
Right.
Trademark it all.
Members, $100 each, we can apply for that trademark instead of...
There you
Or
go. Can I borrow
or maybe
$100?
or maybe if the company I just applied with gives me a real offer, then I can just take care of it.
There you go. There you go. The next, actually, it was a match that I was looking forward to. It was Ricky Starks versus Jake Hagar from the
Ricky Starks.
JAS, and it had Jericho on commentary. I think he's settled into commentary a little bit more. He's settled down, and he's not quite as crazy as when he first started. I think when he retires and goes on to commentary, he's going to be phenomenal. But good God, he's 52, 53, same age as I am, and he's
Yep.
still in pretty goddamn good shape and putting
Yep.
on pretty goddamn good matches.
I was
But,
just gonna say Ricky Starks versus the man with the purple bucket hat.
and he really does like that hat, doesn't he?
He does like the hat.
So it was really a nothing match. There was shenanigans because there's shenanigans. Starks got his entire baby face. Got to play with the hat. It was a good match. It was a fun match. But again, this is more mid card kind of building up Ricky Starks. So to me, there was never really question that he was going to win. It was just kind of a matter of how was he going to win. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. And Jake Hagar is really not great in the ring, but he's got a great amateur background.
And he's a great MMA fighter. He's undefeated.
He is an undefeated MMA fighter, and I have to give him credit. He's got a better MMA record than Phil Brooks.
And he has a better MMA record than me too.
Were you a fighter? Did you get in the cage?
No, I'm 0-0, but he's undefeated, so that's better than my record.
That is, he's actually been in the cage. So
Correct.
the rest of us are all 0-0, I suppose. So
Yes.
we're all undefeated.
Too.
But again, it really,
A lot of deep insight here on the podcast today.
what can I say? Some days you're good, some days you're just not.
Some days there's days like this.
Mama said there'd be days like this.
Yes, she did.
So the Starks pulled out a win. I don't even remember how. I think it was a roll up. Probably wasn't. I don't think he hit him with the Rochambeau. Hager's too goddamn big. Do you?
No, and Ricky Starks at his 170 pounds or whatever he weighs isn't strong enough to lift him, so that's Ricky Starks' fault. Ricky Starks also, I don't know. It seems like I don't want to mean to whine about Ricky Starks, but I'm not the biggest Ricky Starks fan. I think this is the second week in a row he's had a miss. He had that heated promo, that shoot promo on MJF a few weeks ago, and he was super over and like the hottest thing. But then he took the loss to MJF, and he hasn't done anything since then. And it's like MJF called him out for, yeah, you got a few hits, but you're mostly missing. And I think that was evident again. He won the match with a spear. I'm not a fan of a spear from a 175-pound guy when it's beating someone huge like Jake Hager, who probably wouldn't even feel it. And I don't know, Starks doesn't bump very much in the ring, and I don't know if that's due to his previous neck injury, if that's still bothering him. But he just, I don't know. I'm just not seeing this guy having great matches. Sometimes he's on and delivers excellent promos, and then other times they're a miss. So I guess I just, maybe with some more experience, Starks will get better. Maybe he'll get healthier and be able to have better matches. Maybe bulk up because he's not a high flyer, but he's the size of a high flyer. So I don't know. I just feel like Starks needs to step up his game a little bit if he wants to be a main eventer. As a lot of people think he is, but I think he has a ways to go before he can get there.
He does have a good connection with the crowd, which is always valued in wrestling more than wrestling ability. And the small guy beating a big guy. Hell, I was a fan of Rey Mysterio beating Kevin Nash. I don't have an issue with that. But again, you're right. The spear is not the best finisher for somebody who is as big as Hagar. But, he got a finish. Good. He didn't have to do the Rochambeau. Good. He didn't take a lot of bumps because, again, maybe he knows this is kind of his one big push before he, too, moves into something like announcing, because maybe he knows that he's got a limited time before he's put on the shelf. So, he needs seasoning. He needs to get experienced. Maybe if he can keep that connection to the audience that he's definitely got, and build it into a series of matches, maybe he can get over more, and maybe he could dethrone MJF. But, I'm a fan of him, but I'm a fan of most of the roster. So,
Right.
That's kind of the point.
Especially Jeff Jarrett.
I am a fan of Jeff Jarrett. I think I'm going to start an entire Jeff Jarrett podcast because I love him.
Maybe we should change our name to the Jarrett Mark, the double J Mark Order.
Well, I was thinking about our sign-off. It should be Jeff Jarrett for life.
Or maybe, if the Mark Order podcast comes after us, we'll have to change to the Elite Double J Order, because that is definitely, if you search that, it's definitely come 0 results.
I think the Elite Double J Order is perfect. You're right. That is our new name.
And shout out to my brother if he's listening, because I know he's a huge Double J fan too.
Oh, good for him. Good for him. I hope he enjoyed this week's interaction as the comedy starter to the show.
Right.
Because Jeff Jarrett is a true joke.
He will say better Jeff Jarrett in the opener than in the main event, and I think everyone agrees with him.
How can you disagree? And he was only involved in the All Atlantic Championship, which is a complete mid-card title, which I love. Leave him in the mid-card. He's great in the mid-card.
Please. Don't give him a title.
No.
Just do not do that.
I mean, you know what? Give the title to Lethal. Let Jeff Jarrett be the mouthpiece. Shit, yes. Yep. I hate him. Just don't give it to him. But the next segment is Danielson versus Bandito. So, what can you say? It was the best match of the night. It was phenomenal. Once again, Bryan Danielson putting on a wrestling clinic against some of the strongest members of the AEW roster. And this one is the brand new Bandito, who Chris Jericho wrestled and told Tony Khan, hire him, who was on television without a contract and got a call from WWE, hey kid, why don't you work for us? So he's going to get a push soon. He's another top-level talent. I mean, he's former ROH, so people know him. And much like Takeshita, he's connected quickly, and he puts on top-quality matches against people like Danielson. And he doesn't win, but he gets the crowd behind him because he's that damn good. And Danielson, being Danielson, can bring the best out of everybody. And they just had a phenomenal match. They had counters again. Danielson tried to get him in the gory special, or the surfboard, whatever you want to call it. And Bandito fought out of it. He knew, because it's a specialty of lucha. He's like, no, fuck that. I'm not going to let you. So I loved some of the wrestling intelligence that they both put on in this goddamn clinic of a match.
Yeah, there were a lot of great submissions in this match, submissions that you don't really ever see. I saw a post on Twitter talking about what specific styles those submissions were, but there were definitely some unique submissions in the match, probably Lucia stuff out of Mexico that you normally wouldn't see. It was an excellent match. I think, the consensus is it was match of the night. It's got a 9.
Yes.
9.0 on Cage Match, which is phenomenal. It's very rare to see a match hit a 9 that's not on a pay-per-view.
That's what I'm saying. This is a TV match that's pay-per-view quality, and this is not the first time Danielson has done this. He's done it repeatedly, consecutively, and if he loses to MJF, holy god damn, will MJF just cement his position.
Right.
And that's what Danielson's for right now in his career, and he loves this position. He wants to make MJF, because then he gets a great response when whoever MJF loses to or wins against, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean. When he loses that title, whoever he passes it to, it's going to be amazing. And hopefully it's Danielson. Just not yet.
So just for shits and giggles, I'm looking at the rating in Cage Match and where it ranks in Daniel Bryan's match collection,
Uh-huh.
since he is considered one of the GOATs. So Daniel Bryan has 42 matches rated a 9 or better by Cage Match fans, and this one ranks right at 41. It's just ahead of AJ Styles versus Daniel Bryan from ROH from 2002,
There
which
you
Kingpin was in the audience. He was probably at that match
go.
in the front row. He probably caught like AJ after he did some kind of crazy plancha over the railing onto Bryan.
Might even have
Um,
photos of it, like some of you guys,
right?
in the
Uh,
entrance every single time because it ended up in the entrance video.
yeah, the Titantron. So Scott's referring to. I was at ECW One Night Stand in 2007, I think it was, and Randy Orton gave Rob Van Dam a DDT from the a hanging DDT from the railing to the floor that put RVD out, and I was right behind him with my hands on my head saying, "Oh my God!" And it was clear as day. You could see me right after he dumped him on his head, and that made it into Randy Orton's Titantron. And my brother, who watches WWE, I don't. He would always remind me of that. He's like, "Oh, you were on Raw tonight because Orton came out and you were on his Titantron."
Well, there you go. That's how elite you are.
Yeah.
But again, Danielson Bandito had a great match. There was one spot where Danielson had him in the label lock, and he had it over his eyes, and Excalibur was pointing it out, and then he tried to pull his arm back, and Danielson sells those amazingly, and eventually Bandito got to the ropes barely, but caused the break, and Danielson moved on. He didn't do the head stomp finisher. He didn't do the anvil elbows. Didn't do any of the BCC kind of show off moves.
Yeah.
He pulled out a win is what he did. But
Mhm.
damn if he didn't put on a amazing match with Bandito, who looked like a star once again against Danielson, because that's who he's wrestling to get to MJF, are the best of the best right now. I don't know who's next, but I'm excited for Danielson's next match.
Yeah, it's a great series of matches for Brian. I hope he can continue to remain healthy because it's just a treat to be able to watch him at this point in his career. He's talking about winding it down.
Yeah.
So it's definitely just a treat. And I think all of us should appreciate being able to watch him compete because he's easily one of the greatest ever. Just for shits and giggles, I'd like to run down the other Brian Danielson matches that have rated a 9 or better in
Sure. I mean,
AEW.
there's a lot of them, but go ahead and do it.
So versus Kenny Omega, which was 5 stars. His fourth highest rated match ever. Adam Page, so his match versus Hangman, that was on TV in December when they went to the 60-minute time limit, I believe. Adam Page again, the second match, which was early 2022, the rematch that Brian that almost went to the time limit again that Hangman won. Next is his match versus Minoru Suzuki. Next is his match against Daniel Garcia, the 2 out of 3 falls match, which I believe he lost. Didn't he lose that match?
There's a lot of these he lost, and they looked amazing anyways. And he got these great. How many did you say? 40 something?
No, there was 8. Well, 42 rated. He's had 42 matches in his entire career
Oh,
that Cage Match has rated as a 9 or higher, and then 8 of those are AEW matches, and those are the ones I'm running through. So I'm almost done.
okay, only 8. That's
I
cool.
wasn't going to run all 42.
I
No,
was like, damn.
that would take an hour and a half. So Danielson beat Garcia in that 3 falls match, but he
Yeah.
did lose Garcia in another match. So his match versus Eddie Kingston rated over a 9.
Hmm.
Um, there was the Anarchy in the arena match, and the last one on the list is his match versus Bandito. So it was one of the more epic Danielson matches. So props to Bandito. I really
Yeah.
hope I really hope Tony utilizes Bandito and we can see him main eventing shows because he's that damn good. He is phenomenal.
Well, and obviously he was showcased here. That's what Danielson's doing right now, is making sure people are cemented at his level, at being as good as him. He's just slightly better. and that's what he's good at right now. Sometimes he'll lose to him. He'll give him props. He'll take a loss. And at one point, people are like, "Oh my God, he's losing all the time." It's Bryan freaking Danielson. He can take a loss and not be affected by it because the fans are still going to love it. As a matter of fact, this match, instead of yelling yes, they yelled C. Because he's so over, he transcends language.
Yeah, Bandito was getting cheers in this match over Bryan. So
Right,
yeah,
but the C was for Danielson. It just was in Spanish because, Bandito.
Yeah.
So they were doing it for the benefit of Bandito and his audience.
Right. So yeah, and so Bandito was getting. If you said who was the face and who was the heel in this match, you'd almost think Bandito was at certain points because the crowd was really popping for him.
Well, Danielson being Danielson, of course, everybody loves him. But yeah, he was a little bit more heelish, and Bandito was over. There's no question he was over, and he played face. Good. Absolutely.
So with AEW's new set, is Daniel Bryan still coming out the heel side? Or haven't you know? I haven't noticed.
I assume he is. I assume that's never changed.
Okay.
But after that match, they went into a weird MJF segment where he talked about some mask and pulling the mask off, and I don't really know what that one was about, but it was MJF, so it was interesting. Are they poking fun at the spooky ookie over in WWE now? Is this a shot at Bray? I'm not sure what was going on with the mask. He did the little devil thing when he came out to get the title match, but that was months ago. That was a long ass time ago. So
yeah,
it was
it
was a very confusing MJF segment, and I'm not sure what the point of it was. Again, I was really distracted. I would have loved to have gone back and rewatched it. I just didn't get the chance, and so I don't really get what it was about.
So it was MJF was asking Brian Cage to break Daniel Bryan's arm next week.
No, not that segment.
Oh, okay.
The segment was about removing some mask. No, the part where he pays off Cage is a segment later after they interrupt with the Saraya segment.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So this was the video segment that they played that was just confusing. And then they moved on to Saraya, where she and Tony Storm had their little back and forth. And then Sheeta was there to look horrified at some of the smack that they were talking about. These AEW homegrown talent, as obviously an ex-WWE feud seems to be growing now. The consensus across the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community, is that this is going to lead to a blood and guts match where all of the ex-WWE people, girls, women, are going to be on one side, and a bunch of the homegrown AEW women's talent are going to be on the other. I don't know if that's necessarily the direction they're going, but if it is,
that would be fun.
Yeah, I'd be okay with it.
Interesting.
But that said, they did have their little back and forth. They said, Tony's going to go. I'm going to be ringside. Sheeta, you stay here. And then they got into the Brian Cage segment, where he started talking about his match with Danielson, which is next week, I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's next Dynamite. Good to see Brian Cage booked against Bryan Danielson. Battle of Bryans. It should be really good. I'm really interested to see how well Brian Cage can do here. This is a great opportunity for him. I really like Brian Cage's work. I like watching his matches in the indies against up and coming guys. Brian Cage will win, and a lot of times he's fighting guys half his size, but he will let them get all their stuff in, and he will have a good back and forth match, and he will take anything they have. Like, he will work everything. If you want to try an 830, or if you want to dump Cage on his head, he's like, go for it. Like, I really like Cage. He is lacking in the charisma department, as some of the Elite Mark Order chat remembers kindly point out, as he doesn't have much of a gimmick. He's the Machine. He's a big buff guy. he's a meathead and all his moves are just finishers taken from other wrestlers or whatever. I like him. I like watching him. But I do think he needs to find a better way I think he needs to find a new way or find a way to connect to the crowd and engage with the audience a bit more.
Well, in his dark and in his elevation matches recently, since hooking up with Prince Banana, he's actually started to connect a little bit more. The audience has responded a little bit more, so I think he's kind of built up that audience connection a little bit more. I think against Danielson, they're already invested, so it's going to help in the long term with them to be able to respond to him. And you're right, he does match up against the smaller people well. Danielson being Danielson, it'll be a great match. It may not be a 9, but I think Cage will have himself a fairly good match overall next week. And I think the added thing with MJF paying off Cage, not to win necessarily, but to hurt Danielson. I think that might come into the psychology of the match next week. I think we'll see him maybe target something and not, if he's smart, if they're going to play long term, go with not actually going for a win, but targeting the hurt, targeting to take him out. So long term, Bryan Danielson's storyline is he goes into the match against MJF at less than 100%. Thus, that's why he loses.
So, yeah, I thought the MJF interview was brilliant. I'm constantly amazed at what he's able to do. I'm like, oh, so MJF's going to do the heel 101 thing and have Brian Cage, whatever. He's going to pay him, maybe he'll tell Brian to get, but, he said break his arm, and then he slapped Cage in the face, and Cage grabbed MJF by the throat, and Cage looked like he was going to pop his head off.
Yeah.
And MJF, he let him go because of the money. And MJF said that what and I'm paraphrasing. He said, what you feel right now, that's hate. That's the most powerful motivating factor that we have, the most powerful emotion that we have. Use that hate to destroy Brian next week. And I can't put it as eloquently as MJF did because I don't remember exactly what the quote was, but I'm just like, my God, this guy is brilliant. Like he took that interview that I thought was just going to be a wash, and it was brilliant. And it was, just talking about how hate is the strongest emotion and the strongest driver for humans. He just constantly, like, everything he does is A+. The guy is incredible.
And it's always new. He doesn't have the same shtick every time. Sure, he does some chicken shit stuff that's always the same. Yes, he has a series. They called it out. He has a series of matches to qualify to be able to face him. He's done it over and over. But the fact is, it works.
Yeah.
And he called it out with Danielson. He's like, fine, I was going to wrestle anyways. So it doesn't bother him. But they played into it. So MJF is top shelf. He's an A+, absolutely. I think the bidding war of 2024 got away from him. And I think this is his shift.
Yeah.
I think that was the big change with the mask and all that. He moved away from the bidding war of 2024. He's done with that. I don't think that's ever going to come up again. I don't.
Okay.
Because the WWE sales talk, it's like, why would they go after someone like him when they're actually trying to get paid themselves and they don't want to take on a big expense when they're going to be cutting people? Yeah, he's the guy or whatever, but I don't think we're going to see it again. I think
we both know the cons are going to buy WWE, so maybe
that's true. They are currently in the pool of interested parties, and they do have personal funds, and they can put together a pretty big offer, I bet, with some additional investors. It's not outside the realm of possibility. It's just, if Vince is involved, there's no fucking way.
Right.
And so...
Right, yeah. Would Vince approve the sale to Tony Khan?
No, never.
No.
Never.
Because Vince wants to retain control and Tony Khan would not want him to retain control. So yeah, it's not going to happen. So I think Brian Alvarez probably said it best. Brian Alvarez was on his podcast, says, yeah, the Khans are interested in buying WWE. He's like, I wouldn't mind buying WWE either. Dave, maybe me and you can pool our money and buy it. He's like, the likelihood of either of us or the Khans buying it are the same. Zero.
I mean,
they're interested. That's it. It's never going to happen.
I mean, Shahid Khan bought the place where he used to work. So it's not unheard of for the small guy to buy the big guy and then to take that big guy and turn it into a multi-billion-dollar empire. So if he truly thinks that this is an investment that he could be either personally involved with because it is WWE at the highest levels, or just let Tony go crazy. Just let him go crazy. Buy up all the. Why not? He said before. He told Tony when he first started AEW. I read up on him, and he said a few years before, "I'm gonna die one day. Spend my money."
Yeah.
And it's like he's got way too much of it. $8 billion empire. He's like, spend my money. Spend it now. Don't wait.
The other thing Tony Khan's father said, or maybe Tony said it, was his father said, yeah, go ahead and start your wrestling company. Get it out of your system when you're young because it's not going to make money. And Tony continues to prove his father wrong. And hopefully when these TV contracts come up shortly and they get renewed, that he'll even further prove his father's wrong. So,
well, if he can keep this momentum going and have a legitimate company for long term and keep showing profit, and the AEW games, I think once that comes out, once Fight Forever actually comes out, I think that'll be when they start showing profits, because that, in addition to live events, in addition to TV rights, in addition to everything, I think we'll definitely start to see some profits. But again, it's privately owned. We don't know whether or not they're turning a profit.
Right. They can say whatever they want.
But Tony's a numbers guy. That's what they've always said. He's a numbers guy. So he's the one who, he's keeping a close eye on those numbers. I bet he's probably making a small amount of money right now for the company. And he doesn't need to pay himself, clearly.
Right.
But let's face it, we're marks.
Yes. Definitely. And speaking of Tony's interests, the Jaguars are playing the Chiefs on Saturday. And if the Jaguars beat the Chiefs, which is, no one thinks that's going to happen, but no one thought they were going to win their last game either when they were down 27-0 or whatever it was.
Right.
Tony could be looking at a Super Bowl appearance with the Jaguars.
If the Jaguars win the Super Bowl, the people have talked about it. Will the WWE give Tony one of their belts?
Could you imagine Triple H handing Tony Khan that title?
Right. In front of the entire NFL audience.
Right. That'll never happen. Well, first off, I think the likelihood of the Jaguars winning is better than the likelihood of Triple H handing Tony Khan a WWE title. After, basically Khan got him fired for his for AEW beating NXT when Triple H was supposed to put AEW out of business, and he failed miserably.
Yeah, well, Triple H is not as good as he thinks he is, but this is not a WWE podcast. This is an AEW podcast.
He thinks he is, and that's all that matters.
Hey, look! For all of his faults, he's now worth $100 million.
Yep.
And he married the princess, the $1 billion princess, and she's worth $150 million. They're not for lacking, and good on them. Let them retire. Yep. So far, she is. But I don't know. So we got the MJF stuff, and then they moved on to the next, the last segment of the night for the women, which was the Willow versus Toni Storm, and I enjoyed it. I had a good time. Willow Nightingale to me is moving up rapidly in my estimation, in the women's division. That's why she's against somebody like Toni Storm, who is helping elevate her. She and, of course, Saraya fully turned heel in this match, showed their true colors. They're starting that entire division, hopefully, fight that unifies one versus the next and gets them in some big gang war. That's fine by me. Get everybody involved, gives everybody a big storyline to work with, big, meaty, over-the-top kind of stuff. Let's see if we can get some women over with this. Willow, to me, is over. She's getting a great response. She didn't get the win, but I did pick her. I should not have. I had Toni Storm for days and days, and on the day of the actual show, I believe you, Jay, convinced me I should switch over. It was that conversation with you, and I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm switching my pick over to Willow, and that got me. I lost my perfect score. I would have had a perfect prediction on this entire show.
Yeah, I lost my perfect score too. The other one that most people picked the Bucks to win over Top Flight, but I thought that one was kind of obvious. But this one, I thought for sure Sheeta would interfere and Willow would win, because Willow needs to win way more than Toni Storm does. But in turning, Storm and Saraya heel. Did I say that right? Or is it Saraya?
Saraya. Just remember the middle of her name is Ray.
Ray. Okay.
It's Saraya.
It's just a bad choice of a name. I just
blame her parents. That's her real friggin' name.
Yeah. Well, you can change that. Anyhow.
As the man who changed his name, I do understand that can happen.
Wait, your real name's not Scott?
That's actually the only part of my name that's on my birth certificate.
Oh, okay. But was it your middle name, your first name, or your last name?
It was my middle.
Okay. So what can you share or will it be revealed at a later time? That's
I do not talk about my first name.
Okay. Is it Cosmic?
It's not. It's not that bad. It's just names have power.
All right.
So I just go by my middle name, and my last name is actually my mother's maiden name.
Okay.
So there you have my full story.
Yeah, my father uses his middle name as his first too.
It happens. It's very common.
So,
but yeah, mine's fully like on my license, on my high school diploma, on my entire social security card. All of it says just my first and last. I don't have a middle name.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha.
There you go. So Willow, Toni Storm did well.
Yep.
And Saraya, who again named by her parents, has the audacity to come in. She did the distraction so Toni Storm could get the win, and then they attacked her so that Sheeta could actually make the save. Good. It was, whatever. It was a good, fun match. Again, they're building more, and it was the women's wrestling segment. They only get one a night, and I think they had a good pick.
Yep, it was fine. Yeah, I mean, it progresses the storyline, which is interesting, and looking forward to see what comes next.
Absolutely. And then the match that ended the night was another open challenge of the TNT title, which I think, by the way, is the best way to present that title. Leave it as an open challenge. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need a story. Keep doing this. If you can do it weekly, that's what a TV title is for. Darby is a great example. He's got the connection. He's got Sting. Even without Sting, he's got the believability that he can hold on to this really high mid-card title, because the All-Atlantic is the low-end mid-card title. And then this is really the high-end. In old WCW terms, it was the U.S. title, and that was the guaranteed number one contender. You were always the number one contender if you held the U.S. title in WCW. And you always you were number one contender. There was no question. So who was fighting the champion? It wasn't the U.S. champion. It wasn't the U.S. title holder, though he was number one contender. It was very weird, but it worked. And then occasionally you would have, like, Goldberg would have to give up the title to actually receive, which he did, the world title, and then the U.S. title went into some challenge they did. But that was WCW.
Yeah. I thought the match... Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this is AEW, And Darby Allin is a much different sort of champion than we've seen. He plays the underdog better than anybody. And this was a great match and a great example of it. Kushida targeted the shit out of his arm and just went after it, and brought it in a couple of different ways that were really surprising. That were really like, wow, how did he manage to put him in another basically armbar? From that move, from the top rope, he jumped down, and I don't know what Darby was thinking, but his back ended up hitting the mat, and Kushida had him in an armbar. I'm like, where'd that freaking come from? So this was
he jumped over the top rope and put him in a cross arm breaker on the floor. It was just an incredible move. I want to go back and rewatch this one. I haven't watched a ton of Kushida's stuff. So it was really interesting to see him target the arm as much as he did. A lot of crazy arm bars that you just don't see very often. A lot of Kendo Kashin type arm bar stuff. And if you're not familiar with Kendo Kashin, he was the New Japan junior wrestler that was really focused on arm bars. And so like in those early wrestling games, like No Mercy, WCW Revenge, the creator wrestler was very powerful if you created a wrestler that targeted the arm, because you could get a submission pretty quickly, and a lot of those moves were based on the wrestler Kendo Kashin. He'd put you in a cross arm breaker off the top rope. He'd jump off the top rope and you'd end up in a cross arm breaker. And that was kind of what Kushida did to Darby last night. It was super impressive. MJF should have paid Kushida to break Brian Cage's arm, or to break Brian's arm, not Brian Cage.
Yeah, Brian Danielson, exactly. And I think, yeah, absolutely. If he was smart, he'd have gone after somebody like Kushida, who was clearly good at going after an arm, instead of Cage, who attacks the body mostly. So I don't know. It obviously that's a funny booking point. That
maybe what we'll see is Brian Cage damages the arm next week, and now that Kushida has established in AEW that he's targets the arm, maybe MJF will pay Kushida the following week. That would be a cool story.
There you go. That could pay off with the Kushida match where he's like, "Hey, I'm your arm guy. Let's do the arm," and work the arm 2 weeks in a row maybe, and then sets it up for the Salt of the Earth.
Yes, it does set up for the Salt of the Earth,
which again in an Iron Man match doesn't really come into play, are they?
Oh, it does, because each submission's a
right. But how? Let's be honest for a second. Let's fantasy book for a second. How many finishes do you think that Iron Man is truly going to have?
So if someone taps with one armbar, they could tap with multiple arm bars. And I didn't even, I didn't even think of this. That's exactly what's going on here. So MJF's trying to get his arm damaged so he can get Brian to tap a whole bunch of times in that Iron Man match. That's what's happening here. Because like in the wrestling games, if you were in an Iron Man match and you had a good submission guy, like work the arm, you destroy your opponent like 18-2. Because each time you put them in an armbar, they're tapping out. So if that arm is severely damaged, I think we know how MJF is going to win. He's going to get Brian to tap a few times at the end of that hour mark to go up 3-2 or something like that.
Well, I'll be honest with you. That takes a real elite mindset, because to think of that sort of forward progression, the 5D chess that you have to be involved to be able to actually put that together, that's just damned impressive. That's why you're in the elite mark order, I think.
That's right. In the elite mark order, we don't think 1 week ahead. We think one pay-per-view ahead.
At least one pay-per-view. As a matter of fact, if we could, we would think a whole year ahead, but I think Tony keeps outsmarting us. After Hangman, I don't think he has years-long plans anymore. I think he's realized the big lesson is when people get hurt, you have to shift. So sometimes you have to have some of those plans just go away, and you don't get them.
And speaking of plans, did you see Tony Khan referred to CM Punk as one of the finest AEW superstars, like yesterday or something?
He was always a Punk fan, though. And he's always, as the leader of the company, he's always going to keep positive. He's never going to say something negative unless you're a women's wrestler who quit on
Poor Big Swole.
him. She deserved it. I'm sorry. Big Swole was barking up the wrong goddamn tree. She was calling racism where there was nothing. And
Well, just to revisit that real quick, she said there wasn't enough Indian representation in AEW, and Tony Khan's like, I'm Indian?
right, I'm Pakistani, I'm Indian.
Right.
And then his head of legal,
Yeah.
another Indian? I mean, come on
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
It's just ludicrous, some of the stuff that she said during that exchange. And then my point is, she deserved to get called out. Tony
Yep.
did. Yes, he's the leader of the company, and probably you got to keep your tongue tight, but you weren't good enough. I'm sorry. Is totally acceptable feedback. I'm sorry.
That was also the demise of Leo Rush.
Yeah, well, he's so self-destructive. Has he quit again recently? Has he retired
No,
again? It's been over 6 months.
He fought in Wrestle Kingdom 2 weeks ago, and someone gave him a face breaker on the ramp and outside the ring, and he was a bloody mess, and he actually like shattered his cheekbone. It's unfortunate that he had to he was supposed to be at Bola and fight in the same tournament as Takeshita, Daniel Garcia, and Speedball Mike Bailey, but Leo Rush had to cancel his PWG event because he busted his face at Wrestle Kingdom. He was pretty nasty looking.
I do remember a photo of his bloody face. So unfortunately, he got hurt, and he's out for a little bit. So I'm sorry to hear that. I made a joke of him because he made a joke of himself by retiring at least 3 times I know of,
Right.
2 times, whatever. But yeah, we came to the end of the show. I think it might be time for us to do our JJ Forever sign off, JJ for life. Join us at the EliteMarkOrder.com website, where we don't update except once a month, if ever. Join us in the Discord. The link will be in the description, and I assure you that's much more active. We do a whole lot in there, including posting gifts that I hand make. Be sure to share those across all social media. Is there anything you want to say in closing, Jay?
Yeah, join our Satnam Singh fan club. We're putting together a petition for Satnam Singh to fight Marco Stunt in a cage match.
The satellites unite.
Yep.
Bring us together for the big hand band.
So Marco Stunt versus Satnam Singh is what we're pushing to see. We think it could main event All Out next year. So yeah, so join us at EliteMarkOrder.com and join the Satnam Singh fan club.
JJ for life.